From the banks of the Colorado River in Lake Mead to the homes and businesses in Southern Nevada, welcome to Water Smarts, the podcast pumping from the heart of Las Vegas, where we engage with the experts who keep the water flowing throughout Southern Nevada. I'm Bronson Mack.
And I'm Crystal Zuelke. From how we treat it, deliver it, use it, protect it, and conserve it, the Water Smarts podcast is all about water in Southern Nevada. We hope to make you a little smarter about the one thing that keeps us all connected: water.
Crystal, how's it going today?
I'm enjoying this gloomy Tuesday. I got rained on this morning. Did you?
Oh my gosh, when I got up this morning and walked out to my car, I was like, hey, wait a second. It must have rained last night because I could see the remnants of it. I didn't actually get to experience it myself falling from the sky, but I could certainly see that it had happened because there was evidence.
Yeah, there was. We're ending, right? Monsoon season. We didn't have a ton of rain this summer, but we had some, and this last week was kind of rainy on and off. So this is everybody's reminder that anytime it rains, you should turn off your irrigation clock to help us save water throughout the community. But also now we're in fall watering restrictions. So you should only be watering 3 days a week if you have grass, and you can water even less if you have plants and trees. We recommend 2 days a week if you have drip irrigation.
Yep, that is a great reminder. Fall watering is in play. That is from September 1st until October 31st. So it's actually pretty easy to remember when to change your sprinkler clock coming out of fall, going into winter. That is going to be on Halloween. That's when we go to 1 day a week. But from now until Halloween, make sure your irrigation clock is set to a maximum of 3 days a week. And just like you said, Crystal, your trees and plants actually can use a little less. One thing that we do get inquiries on this time of year is the fact that September is still hot, and some people just don't believe that 3 days a week is going to be enough. But just keep in mind that there's a lot of other science behind this. The angle of the sun is different. We don't get as much solar radiation during the day. That allows the soils to stay moister throughout the day. So with all of that coming into play, going to 3 days a week for your grass and, 2 days a week or so for your drip irrigated trees and plants, they're going to all do just fine. And we're going to learn just a little bit more about trees, and especially here within our urban environment, because today we're talking to Eddie Rodriguez. Eddie is the municipal forester for the city of North Las Vegas. And he's going to talk with us about some of the projects that the city of North Las Vegas is doing to help protect the community from the hotter days that we are seeing in this valley and expected to see in the future. Eddie, welcome to the Water Smarts podcast.
Thank you, Bronson and Crystal. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're really happy to have you, Eddie. Thanks for giving us a little bit of time here. We know you have a lot of demands on your time, seeing as how you are the first municipal forester for the city of North Las Vegas. That's kind of a unique position, a municipal forester. Can you just help our listeners understand a little bit about your position and your role as the municipal forester for the city of North Las Vegas?
Several years ago, during the beginning of COVID, our city was working on a strategic plan at the time. And one of their plans is community health and well-being, which addresses physical, mental, and social health. To show their commitment to that, they hired a forester to help mitigate these environmental impacts that have kind of just come to the forefront. You started to hear things like urban heat island, carbon sequestration, rising temperatures, and water conservation. And so those are some of the things that the forester is looking at versus just going out and trimming trees.
So on this podcast, Eddie, we've talked about the increasing temperatures and how tree canopy and shade can help mitigate the effects of the urban heat island, one of those key terms you just mentioned. And Eddie, we got lucky this summer and we didn't have the intense heat that we had in 2024. So it wasn't as bad for us. But Southern Nevada is one of the fastest warming cities in the country. So it's important to find ways to respond to the increasing temperatures. And some of the studies we've seen predict that we'll have 100 days above 100 degrees in the near future. So what is North Las Vegas doing to increase the shade canopy? And do you have any goals or benchmarks that you can share?
Absolutely. So in 2022, there was a canopy study done across the valley. That study would say that North Las Vegas would have a 3% canopy cover. that means it's really hot here. It also said that in order to achieve tree equity, we would need to plant approximately 55,000 trees, which is about 8% canopy cover. We wanted to have a sustainable forest. So what we did is we introduced an ordinance. It's called a no net loss canopy cover. But what it really was saying was that if we lose a tree, we'll replace it with another one. So we'll never decrease, but we'll maintain or increase. It takes 7 to 12 years before we can see any measurable benefits from a newly planted tree. So this is one of the reasons why we introduced some tree protection ordinances, because we think that the highest priority is actually our existing canopy cover, and that we preserve our existing trees and our mature trees. And then right under that would then follow tree planting. But in the meantime, we have to figure out, how do we preserve and maintain our existing canopy cover, especially since you're starting to see trees and plants fail throughout the valley.
Yeah, I think that's really important to note. And I think we do get into that a little bit more in the podcast. But I do want to go back to something else. You had mentioned that North Las Vegas has only 3% canopy tree coverage right now, and that the goal is to get to 8%. It's about 55,000 trees. Is that correct?
That's correct. But we have limited space. So a lot of that needs to go into the residential arena.
And that's where I was going to go with that question, is because the space is so limited, how are you depending on others to help? Is that residences? Is it businesses? How does North Las Vegas plan to reach that goal?
Well, it really is quite a challenge, but I would have to say one of the number one things that we've done is that we've partnered up with some nonprofit organizations such as Impact Nevada or Impact NV, who supplies us with a lot of trees, and they get funding from the U.S. Forest Service, Nevada Division of Forestry, and SNWA to help plant trees in the hottest areas of our community, which is in our residential neighborhoods. I also partner up with another nonprofit organization called Nevada Plants with Lisa Ortega to do tree giveaways in the residential communities. We found this to be highly successful, giving away trees. And the reason why we think it's more successful than going and planting a tree in someone's front yard, because the owners come out and they make an investment of their own time by coming out, standing in line, waiting for a tree. When they get there, we're able to go over the type of tree that they need for the area they want to plant it in, and how to plant it, how to maintain it, and take care of it. And after we've discussed and gone over all these things and educated them about trees, then they could go back and plant it themselves. And we think that that investment is enough to make it a very successful planting.
Yeah, those partnerships that you mentioned, Eddie, so critical. I mean, what Impact Nevada is doing, what Lisa Ortega and her group are doing, distributing these plants and going through an education process with the individuals that get the tree, making sure that we're really giving that tree the best success for survival, right? Empowering the community to be able to take advantage, not just of a free tree, but let's make that a successful tree. Let's get that tree to maturity. Let's expand that tree canopy so that we can all begin reaping the benefits of these trees. And Eddie, it wasn't that long ago that the Southern Nevada Water Authority worked with the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition and other experts to update the regional plant list. And one of the main reasons for that update was to make sure that we were noting the appropriate trees. You talked about educating the community as well as the appropriate tree in the appropriate location. And that's a lot of what the regional plant list is all about, making sure that we've got the appropriate trees noted that are going to do well here in our environment, because, we're going to continue to see excessive heat, and not every tree is heat tolerant. We want to make sure that those trees survive as those temperatures climb. So, Eddie, can you just talk a little bit more about why is it important to plant trees that can withstand those hotter temperatures that we're going to be experiencing? It's, again, finding the right tree in the right place, but that heat really does have an impact on our tree canopy as well.
Absolutely. Climate change projections suggest that we're actually going to increase by 7 to 9 degrees by mid-century. That's only 25 years from now. And we are already seeing a decline in some of our trees and plants throughout the valley. Desert adapted trees and plants, they have exceeded their evolutionary period. They're not working right now. And so what we found when we started looking at our trees throughout our cities and we started to see that trees were failing, we started to take a look at what was the reason. And heat tolerance came to the forefront. So we started looking at trees that were primarily only heat tolerant. They are set up differently than your other trees and plants. You take a look at their leaf structures, their branch structure and leaves. The leaves are shinier, thicker coated. And what we found was that the stomata, the openings on the surface of the leaves, that heat-tolerant plants have more of these stomatas. They're able to pull in more carbons. Their photosynthesis is occurring at a much higher rate. If they can pull in more carbons, that means they're cleaning the air even more. We're in an urbanized desert. We have buildings, pavement, surfaces. It was never this hot before. What happens is as soon as you hit around 90, 95 degrees, trees do a thing. They go like this. They go and they hold their breath. Once they start holding their breath, they don't take up any more water or anything. So they go all day, all night. They're not pulling up any water. They're staying closed. Well, what's happening is since the nighttime temperatures start staying so hot, they're not opening back up until it gets real late. Well, what's the problem with that? Problem is they didn't store enough energy during the day. So by the time it finally does open and the trees start to want to use that energy, there's not enough there. So as we sustain 100-degree temps, they don't store enough energy. They start using it all up and they die of energy depletion. Typically, if a tree dies because it's too hot, you'll see sun scorch. You'll see scorch on the leaves. These are dying all at one time in like a 2-week period, like they're just gone. And you're seeing that with sumacs, you're seeing it with a lot of different varieties of trees. But I'm telling you, it's the nighttime temperatures and it's not going to get better. We have to figure out a way to deal with this. And we have to start looking at the heat tolerance of trees and plants.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful information for people that are starting to see their trees not do so well, because some people just assume throw more water at it and that's going to solve the problem. But it's way more complex than that. So other than selecting trees to make sure that they are going to survive the kind of heat that we expect to experience in the coming years, what else should someone know when they're selecting a tree for their landscape?
There are 5 things that I recommend for people who are right now experiencing this throughout the valley. Number 1 is species selection. You were saying earlier, Bronson, about right tree in the right place. That is so important. So species selection, it starts with that. And then we go to water management. So we want to make sure that we're using the right amount of water on trees. We're using the right watering systems on trees. And also when you're watering trees and in the right way and at the right time, stomata is functioning and working the way it's supposed to be. And it's cooling the leaves in the trees at the same time, actually helping conserve water. The third thing I would say is soil management. You can really help with your soil by keeping it moister by adding mulch around the base of the trees. The fourth thing I would say is try to plant trees in groupings. So this is what we're doing in our parks right now in North Las Vegas. We are planting in groupings of like 3 to 5 trees, even some areas 7 trees together. And what that does is it creates microclimate for the trees. They shade each other out, cut the wind down. They work together to fight off disease. And they actually keep more moisture in the soil and you don't have to water as much. And then number 5, I would say maintenance practices. We're taking way too much out of trees and plants as well. So the name of the game, right, is the more foliage you have, the more food that it's providing for itself. The more stomatas that it's having, the more cooling effect that it's having on itself. That was one of the things that City of North Las Vegas did was change its specs in its contracts to say you're only going to take out between 5 to 15% of the foliage at any one time. As you start taking more foliage off, the tree starts to ask for more water and it's saying, I need to grow. So we're eliminating that. There's a number of ways of conserving water just by changing some of your maintenance practices.
Eddie, that is fantastic information. You know, I remember growing up here in the valley as a youngster, And it was very common practice to do tree topping, where they would top the trees. They would essentially cut all of the foliage off the trees and then allow it all to grow back. Obviously, we've gotten a lot smarter about that. Our landscape community has become more aware about how to properly prune trees, and we want to make sure that our listeners and our residents here in Southern Nevada have that same information. There is a lot of good information out there on the internet. Local arborists are also here to help. Hey, Eddie, before we let you go, what are your favorite tree species out there? As far as here in Southern Nevada, what are the tree species that you really enjoy?
We're trying out a lot of different oaks. We find that oaks are better carbon sequesters, and they seem to hold up their bark, and their leaf structures seem to tend to hold up better in some of these hotter temperatures. We're planting eucalyptus trees. You can't really get them from your local store. You got to kind of go out of the state to find them. But we're trying about 5 to 6 different eucalyptus trees. We're looking at some of the Chinese pistache. I kind of like the common pistache a little bit more. Those are some of the trees that we're working on. There's not a lot of trees that are going to work well in our climate. There's a lot of concern about us creating a monoculture, but we do have to try different species types and trees.
One other thing that occurs to me, Eddie, is the historic Kyle Ranch. I know that there's been some efforts going on there. Can you just key our listeners in on some of what's going on there with North Las Vegas?
Absolutely. When I first came here, I got a chance to look at this place. It's kind of a crown jewel of North Las Vegas that not many people look at. And it was very exciting to me because I went to this historical park called Kyle Ranch Park. And when I got there, I noticed, or I seen there was a sign that said the historical Kyle Ranch Orchard, but there was no trees there. And I thought, wow. So I began to do some research, began to find out that at one time there was an orchard that existed back in the mid-1850s. It first started out with the Native Americans found the spring. They started to use that spring for water. Well, then the Mormons came through and started to teach them how to plant and grow trees and vegetables. And then later on, Kyle Conrad would end up taking over the ranch and begin to use that spring to develop an orchard. So what we did was we went back and tried to replicate as best as possible what that orchard looked like. I talked to people around town, some historians, to find out what type of trees and plants and fruits and vegetables that were there. And we started planting fruit trees and vegetables there. So this fall, we're going to have some seniors come actually plant vegetables and then in a few months come back and harvest them. But that is the goal, was to have a place where we can teach people about the history of the orchard and to also teach them how to grow fruits and vegetables for themselves.
Outstanding stuff, Eddie. Wonderful leadership there in the city of North Las Vegas. The first municipal forester for the city of North Las Vegas, all the efforts that you are doing to preserve Kyle Ranch, preserve our tree canopy, our urban forest, and expand that urban forest. Just really, really important stuff. Eddie, thanks so much for joining us here on the Water Smarts podcast and sharing the good work that you're doing in North Las Vegas with our listeners.
Thank you, Bronson. Thank you, Crystal. I appreciate you so much and look forward to seeing you guys in the future.
Crystal, good information there on trees. I really, really liked hearing from Eddie.
That was so good. I felt like, I learned a lot. I felt like I got a little lesson in earth science. And I'm sure I learned about some of this stuff before when I was young. But again, that was a long time ago. I don't retain that kind of information. And I'm not a scientist, but I love the new word I learned today, stomata.
Stomata. Very cool,
Stomata.
Right? I thought, when he started talking about the stomata, I thought, oh my gosh, I just saw a video maybe a month or so ago where it was talking about the stomata in the leaves. And I couldn't remember what the word was, but once he called the stomata, I was like, oh, that's that video I saw on YouTube. But I think Eddie really summed it up there, and how they ultimately help the tree to cool the tree. And when we're in excessive heat, the stomata don't really perform as they would normally do. And therefore, some of our trees are just not dealing with this excessive heat that we've been experiencing and will continue to experience going forward. So he's right. Protecting those legacy trees that we have here is going to be really key. And, we have a lot of great arborists here in Southern Nevada. And so I would just encourage anybody who has a tree that's struggling in your yard, maybe reach out to an arborist. It might be that your tree needs more water or needs some adjustments to its irrigation system. We want to make sure that trees are getting the water that they need, especially the trees in your yard. So we want to make sure that you feel comfortable to make sure you're watering those trees appropriately.
And we also have resources on our website, snwa.com. If you're just curious about the trees that you've had in your yard, and if you're starting to see them suffer a little bit, you can look at our website and learn about which trees are going to do best in our climate as it gets hotter. So, Eddie mentioned 7 to 9 degrees hotter over the coming years. That's a big increase. So really, we all just have to take matters into our own hands and just learn a little bit more about what we can do to protect our existing trees.
Absolutely. And that's why you're listening to the Water Smarts podcast, so that you can be a little bit smarter about the things we talk about here. So hopefully you feel more informed and educated on trees. Well, that's it for this episode here on the Water Smarts podcast. We hope you subscribe and listen next time. And if you like the show, give us a rating. It really helps us reach more Southern Nevadans. And if you'd like more information on conservation, water quality, new technology, and even things about trees, everything you know to be water smart, you can find those tips, videos, and other resources on our website at snwa.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you here next time on Water Smarts.